Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. I'm your host, James Ferrigno. Join me while we explore the truths most people never hear. Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about possibly the most important overlooked aspect of human life today. This one problem underlies so many other issues. It affects everyone, everywhere, all the time. It changes everyone's life in small ways and in enormous ways. It will affect almost everything that happens to you for your entire life. Almost all the big problems that the earth has today stem from this issue. This issue is initiation. And the initiation process is something that humans have had since the dawn of humanity until very recently. Only in the last 1,000 years or so, it has started to die off, and we have less and less of it. And without initiation, people do not know how to behave. So, first, I'm going to give you the background of this and a little bit of history about it and its importance to all of us. Then later in this episode, make sure you stick around because that's when I'm going to give you the tools that you need to begin to be able to either initiate yourself, at least to educate yourself around it, and be able to pass this on to other people. So this is the really important stuff comes later. But first, I need to give you a background and understanding of what it is that we're talking about. So the initiation process, you've probably heard that term before. You probably have some awareness of it. There are things that are called that don't really fulfill what people need. So almost all indigenous cultures and all historical cultures had some level of initiation process, and most were quite extensive. And the initiation process, simply put, is for young people, usually around adolescence, teaching them some important things about living in the world. And these important things include self-awareness, awareness of one's emotions, awareness of what's going on inside of you at any particular time, how to communicate with others, how to share your emotions, and when to share them and when not to, how to communicate with other people, how to communicate with another gender, how to communicate with people that are older than you and people that are younger than you, how to be able to learn about yourself, because life is a process of learning about yourself in large part. So there are ways that you can learn who you are. And it really is one of the first steps in being able to accomplish anything in the world is to learn who you are. So teaching you to learn how you are, and then also teaching you to be able to take care of yourself, your body, your emotions, your mind, and to be able to love yourself. And self-love, self-care, self-respect, all of these things are important so that then you can move on to maybe meeting a life partner, being able to interact with other people and communicate, whether it's in a formal way with family, with friends, with relationships, with more casual acquaintances. All of these things are really important. Being able to interact with other human beings is incredibly important. And when you don't know who you are, and you don't care about yourself or respect yourself, you're not going to be able to do that very effectively. And so there's different pieces here. And unfortunately, what's happened is almost all cultures had an initiation process like this. And there's a lot of details to it. There's a lot to learn, a lot to practice. And young people throughout history have been taught this. Now, for some reason, around the Middle Ages in Europe, it started, with a lot of other things, started to disappear. And it's become less and less and less over time. People still will have events that are kind of a leftover from an initiation process. Like they'll have a celebration or a party or maybe a ceremony. And ceremonies are part of the initiation process. But if you're left with only a single ceremony, say for graduation or something like that, that doesn't really prepare you for the world. That's not an initiation process. Initiation process is something that you need to immerse yourself in and work at over time, over years. really over a lifetime. It is also something that you weren't just shipped off to one particular expert to teach you, or something that just your parents taught you. So parents play a role in that, but really the whole society and the extended family almost always played a role in that. Um, in many cultures, they would divide the boys and girls, and then all the men of the village or city or wherever you were would help to initiate the younger people. This is something that is community based. So both for boys and girls, the people of their particular gender were helping to initiate them into what their role in society would be. And now there's not much of that left. There are assumptions about what your role is, but no one's really teaching you. Even the roles we have, for better or worse, are still not really communicated clearly. So even if it's a dysfunctional role, even the dysfunctional role isn't taught to us. So that's an issue. So if you're looking for practical help creating healthier relationships, understanding your emotions, and creating lasting changes in your life, I also work with people one-on-one. You'll find more information in the description. So there's a lot of different aspects to this, and it can't all be taught in one podcast, but I'd like to look at some of the basics. And some of the first fundamental starting pieces of this are learning to know yourself and learning to be aware of and be able to identify your own emotions. That's the beginning. And that's something that really is not taught to young people. It really just isn't. And this is something that has slowly degraded over the last 1,000 years as well. You can see that, like, the Romans had some level of this, and in the ancient world they had some. In the Middle Ages it became less. The Renaissance, even less. In fact, throughout my lifetime, like, I grew up as a kid in the 70s and 80s, what little initiation process there was left, I have seen it deteriorate since then. There's even less now than there was, say, 40 years ago. So it really is following that pattern. And I really believe that it is important for the human race to turn this around, because this affects everything. If you think about it, when one generation is not educated, not initiated into how to deal with their emotions, how to notice or even pay attention to their emotions, but then how to be able to manage their emotions, how to be able to share their emotions, how to be able to communicate them to others, and how to get to know themselves, then that generation doesn't learn it, so they don't know it to pass it on to the next. And the situation now is, for most people, unless you're in a very small number, your parents didn't know because their parents didn't know, because their parents didn't know, because their parents didn't know, because their parents didn't know. And that goes on and on and on. So we've had generation after generation of generation of very handicapped, confused people going back quite a long time now. And this has been a problem for the human race. This has been a problem with all these problems in the world, really can be traced back to this. If you think about it, if you have world leaders who don't really know themselves, don't really know who they are, don't really have an awareness of their emotions, so how are they going to deal with their emotions when they're not even aware of them? And if they are aware of them, then they don't know how to deal with them, how to process them, how to share them with others, how to get help. They don't even know they need help. And when you don't know yourself and you're not aware of your emotions, what happens is your emotions will start to make decisions for you. They will control you, and you will be completely unaware of it. And this is the situation we are in. This is the situation we find ourselves in the world today. So not only the populations of the world, but the leaders of the world also, for the most part, are unaware of their emotional states, are unaware of how to process their emotions, are unaware of who they are unaware of how to communicate clearly with people. And so their emotions are making their decisions for them. And that process is happening 100% out of their awareness in most cases. So you can see that good decisions are going to be hard to come by. There's going to be a lot missing. And when you are unaware of your emotions and they start to control you, what happens when you have some anger you don't know about? Then your anger is making your decisions. What happens when you have some fear you're not aware of? Then your fear is making your decisions. What happens when you have some sadness you're not aware of? And then your sadness is making your decisions. So when your sadness and anger and fear are making your decisions for you without you knowing, this affects everything. And if you're in a position of authority of some kind, it affects the people underneath you as well. But even if not, it still is affecting your whole life. And just imagine this. This is the world. Each of us walking around, not being able to do these things for ourselves. So our emotions making our decisions for ourselves. We don't know what we're doing. And we're making all these decisions that we're unaware of. And we believe that we're being reasonable or logical. And that's simply not the case in most cases. So when you have the population doing that, and then you have leaders also doing it, and then their decisions affect the population as well, and almost all decisions are made, at least in part, in this way, well, what are you going to end up with? In fact, it's a miracle things are as good as they are. It's a miracle we don't have even more problems. So there will be some smart people making some good choices, but mostly we have these problems, and this is where severe things come from. So whatever it is, misogyny or racism or fascism, how they play out and where they come from. And how sometimes people like, I can't believe that people are making these decisions. How can they make them? Well, they can make them because they're not making them. The emotions that they're unaware of are making them. And there is a spectrum in this. I'm not saying we're not all robots. We're not all the same. Some people have had some small amount of initiation. If you're really smart, you can figure some things out for yourself. If you're really well read, you could learn some parts of this. And some religions still do have vestiges of it, and people who get exposed to that are going to be in a bit of an advantage. There are also some progressive and alternative education programs that provide some pieces of the initiation process. So there's little pieces of it out there, whether it's in a progressive educational system, whether it's in the vestiges in a religious setting, or maybe a parent who's well read and learned about this themselves and passed some of that on. And for someone who maybe has been exposed to all three of those, they're in a pretty good position, right? So there are some people like that. But for the most part, you have to be pretty lucky to be in that situation. So that's where we find ourselves. And now I want to go a little bit more into detail about some of these things. Becoming aware of your emotions is the first step in that is simply to, well, if you're listening to my voice right now, you're doing the first step is to be aware that that is the situation. So I'm aware that I'm not aware. That's the starting point. And then just focusing your awareness through today to pay attention to, am I feeling something right now? What am I feeling? As a caveat, I will also say that some people have some emotional awareness that they're born with that is much higher than the average. Most women seem to have much higher emotional awareness than men do. That just seems to be the case. That's not universal, but For the most part, women can be aware of things that men aren't often. And some men are very aware of it, but for the most part, since women are starting out already more aware in the norm, they have some publications and things that they read, and they will have some ability to communicate about their emotions to each other, and then that helps to provide part of the initiation process there. So that puts women generally in a much better position than men are, usually. So, of course, some men get similar things, but the society in general doesn't really provide men with much of any education on emotions and self care and self love. And in fact, those things in most cultures are looked at as negative for men to pay attention to. I think that's starting to change in the last few years, but certainly for people who are leaders today, most of them grew up with that. It's not 100% universal, and certain groups do, fare a little bit better. But even the best, even the person who's getting the most, even the groups of people that have the most little bits of the initiation process, virtually no one is getting the entire thing, which would really be helpful for people. Now, you may learn it throughout 40 years of your life, but it's not taught to you when you're young, so that then you can reach 20 years old and know all of these things. So that's extraordinarily rare. It's truly important to be aware of your emotions, and then to be able to identify them, be able to tell which one you're feeling, and be able to know when they come up. And then it's a higher level skill to be aware of it immediately, to be aware of it. When we first start to learn it, we'll be aware of it right after we have the emotion. So, or you'll be having it for quite a while before you realize that that's what's going on. Like, say, if you get angry or scared or something, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. You'll figure out, and then a half hour later, oh, wait, I think I am scared. But eventually, you will immediately be aware of it. For better or worse, that's now a pretty high order skill in the world, is to immediately be aware of what emotion you're feeling. Because think of how much of an advantage this gives you everywhere, whether it's in your relationships, in your career, with your family, with everyone. When you know what you're feeling, then you can also see in other people what they're feeling. And this whole other landscape opens up, this whole other world. And when you can see inside yourself and you're seeing inside of others, and you can see what's happening, then you could really make a lot better choices and decisions and say better things and be more successful in every way. And this is just from emotions, but there's other aspects of your personality that is good to know, to be aware of, to know who you are. And you do hear a lot today about being authentic. And I think I've talked about this before, but I think it's good to reiterate that to be truly authentic, you have to become aware of yourself. The true authenticity is sharing what you know about yourself, what you understand about yourself, sharing your actual true self. If you have not gone through any initiation process and you haven't sorted the things out yourself, or been through 30 years of therapy, or whatever it takes to get to that stage, gone to workshops, been helped by others, then you're not aware of what's going on. So when you believe you're being authentic, you're just being the way you normally are. And the way you normally are, when you haven't gone through any of this process, is you're unaware of your emotions and you're unaware of who you are. So people will believe they're being authentic. This is what I see a lot in working as a coach with lots of clients, is they believe they're being authentic. It just means they're not lying, but they're still unaware of themselves and unaware of their emotions. And this is an important distinction, to know when you're being authentic. Most of us do not have the capability to be authentic, because you have to know who you are first. You have to be the first one to figure it out. Until that happens, you do not have the capability to be authentic. Doesn't mean you can't be truthful or not lie to people, but that's not the same thing. So This happens in dating a lot. I've seen where people say, just be yourself. Well, how are you going to be yourself when you don't know who you are? You can't. So that's usually not good advice. Be the best version of yourself. Now, that's a lot better. That's a lot better to say than be yourself, because that gives the person something to strive for. Go take a few years and figure out who you are, then come back and go on a date. That's probably the best course of action there. I suppose you can be practicing, but be aware that you're not aware, which is really the first step in awareness, right? Is being aware that you're not aware. That's a huge leap. That's a huge success right there. So if you're just watching this or reading a book and you are aware that you have something to learn, that's where you move forward a lot, just with that awareness. So some of the aspects of what you can learn about yourself are emotions, of course, are a very important one, but also learning what are your propensities, what do you really love, what do you really, and a lot of people don't really know. And don't just go by what you're doing now or what you think should be doing, but what do you really love to do? What do you really care about? And those can be hard questions to answer and hard to get to, and they're hard to get to because you don't really know yourself. So, and other things to know are like, what are your beliefs? What do you believe about things? What are your values? What do you stand for? That's really important. Really, what are your most important values? What are the 5 most important values to you? What's the one most important value that you have? Because everyone needs to have some values, right? You have values of some kind, but you may not know what they are. So finding things like this out teaches you about yourself. So once you find out what your values are, what your beliefs are, what you love to do, now decisions become a little easier to make. Proper decisions become a little easier to make. Decisions that are appropriate for you. And then you can start to make plans and have goals, appropriate goals. And a lot of us, I know I've done this, is stumbling through having goals and then trying to achieve them. And then maybe it falls apart, or maybe I get it, but I'm not happy. So, because you can achieve the goal and not get it, or it can fall apart mysteriously or inexplicably. And it's because it was not the right goal to begin with. It's not really appropriate for you because it doesn't maybe match up with your beliefs and your values. So those are some of the things that you can learn, some of the important things to learn about yourself. Also learning about your tastes and what kind of people you like, or what kind of people you're attracted to, what kind of people that you deal well with, what kind of people you don't deal well with and have more challenges with. And those things are all important as well. So once you can put these pieces together, learning all these things about yourself, being aware of your emotions, then there's self-love, self-respect. That's fundamental as well. This is like all 3 of these are building blocks of the foundation. You're not going to build anything really without them. You can't really put things together if you don't have all of these. You need to have self-love and self-respect. Otherwise, you will undermine yourself and not be able to move forward very well. So what is self-love anyway? I know I've said this before, but I think it's good to repeat this. What self-love is caring about yourself and treating yourself well. So basically, it's treating yourself the way you would treat someone else that you love, treating yourself the same way. And sometimes I use the example of treating yourself the way you would treat a newborn baby. A good rule of thumb to use is anything you wouldn't do to the baby, don't do to yourself. So if the baby drops something, would you say, "Oh God, you're so stupid. You do that every time"? Probably not, right? So you might not want to say that to yourself if you drop something. And really, that goes for anything. And I think negative self-talk, whether it's out loud or in our head, is one of the ways that we mistreat ourselves. And it really is one of the biggest blocks to self-care and self-love. And so pay attention to your negative self-talk. Beating yourself up. I'm so stupid. I always do this wrong. This happens every time. All the exaggerated things that we say about ourselves. If you do that, first stop. The first thing to do is stop and realize that what you're saying to yourself, first of all, isn't true. It's almost never true. The thing that you criticize yourself for in your head, every single time I do this, it does that. Really? Was there one time that that didn't happen? Well, then it's not every time. You don't always do that. You don't always drop the thing. And that doesn't always happen. We'll also start to, when we do it to ourselves, we do it to other people too. Okay, you always say this. It's like, well, always? Is there one time they hadn't said it? Well, then it's not always. And the exaggerations like that uh, really undermine the exaggeration itself. Just the exaggeration part of it really undermines self-love and self-respect. So it's something to pay attention to be aware of, and to correct if you can. So what I usually have clients do is take a day at first, and just pay attention to your self-talk. What's going on inside your head, especially if you actually verbalize it. But what are your thoughts regarding yourself? Just pay attention for a day and see how many times. It'd be good to keep track on a piece of paper. Check mark every time you say something negative about yourself. Carry around a little book and see what that ends up like at the end of the day. First, realize that it's untrue. And second, say something positive about yourself to balance it out. Realize that there are good things that you do and that you have strengths. That's where confidence and self-respect come from, is realizing what your benefits to the world are, what your strengths are. We all have them. So instead of focusing on the weakness that you have, or just a mistake you made, and then blowing it out of proportion into this, pretending it's this bigger mistake than it even is, where you focus, that's where your energy goes. That's where things are going to expand. So then that's going to be a big part of your life, instead of just this true thing about what you do in a positive light. That can be much more empowering. So if you want to empower yourself, compliment yourself, which is why the mirror exercise of telling yourself love yourself while you're looking in your eyes is so powerful. What you're probably starting to realize here is there's all kinds of ways that we can break down the initiation process, look at it, see what the most important parts of it are, and teach it to ourselves. And this is exactly what I've been doing for about 40 years now. I'll give you some tools and some things to look at that will help you do that as well. Getting a coach is not a bad thing to do either. Have me or someone else help you through it, because they have all the resources at their command to be able to help you in an organized fashion. Be good to start with some of these, with the fundamentals, the emotions, self-love, self-awareness. So start with that. And then after those things are learned to at least some degree, then you get into the communication process. So communicating with other people, being able to notice things about other people, learning about the other gender, because you have to deal with them, and especially if you're attracted to that gender. Then with dating and sexuality and relationships, there's a whole nother huge area of things to be aware of and learn. And that's a big part of the initiation process, because there's a lot to that. There's a lot to it. Learning all of these things is something that you can do for yourself, and you can learn a lot of it on your own. And then maybe you can have, learn a bunch of it, and then take some time, then get a coach for a while, and then they can help you with it. So you can also read books, which will help you. You got to get the information from somewhere. You can look at, I hesitate to recommend just any old YouTube thing or something on the internet, because there are some fantastic people out there giving you fantastic information. There is also a lot more of the opposite. So you want to be really careful about what you're intaking and believing. And there's a huge amount of misinformation, I'm sure, as you know, and things that are the opposite of what you should be doing to really help yourself. And I see that a lot. A lot of the leadership, the famous people, the people in power, they also don't know. So, and they're trying to come up with these other tricks and tips and ways to get around things, but you have to do the real work. There's no shortcut. There's no, oh, just do this one thing or, 30 days. There is nothing like that. Not that will function, not that will really work. So, sure, you can learn things and make progress in a weekend workshop. You totally can. But it's not going to completely change you. It's not the end of the road. And really, especially in a society like this, which is now global, it's everywhere, the lack of initiation, the lack of all this information, it takes a lifetime to learn these things. I mean, when you didn't get initiated as a young person, it takes a lifetime. So it's kind of a never ending process. It will just keep going. And really, it was always like that. Even a 90-year-old shaman from thousands of years ago was still learning, still growing. I mean, people learn and grow. It's like any other skill. It's like if you were learning, I don't know, violin or even guitar, it's going to take a while until you're good at it, and even until you're pretty good. And just like anything else, that's just how things work. So you need to put some time in. And also, if you have people helping you, it's going to go a lot faster than doing it for yourself. Usually. I mean, I don't know. We're all different. We all learn in different ways. But in my experience, usually people who can have a coach, a good coach, can do much better, more quickly. You just speed up the process a bit. It's the same process, but you'll just speed it up if you have someone really good to help you. I'm going to focus on some things to do. So we've already actually gone over some of them, learning to get to know yourself and be authentic with the emotions. That's really important. And there are some books that can help you. And you can also do emotional release and pay attention to your emotions yourself. There are some books that you can read that will help you with this. The all-time best book that I have found for learning about what your emotions are, being able to pay attention to them, seeing how they interact, seeing and really just understanding them, and going through a process of growth is Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender by David R. Hawkins. I'll put that in the description. There's a number of other books you can read. I'll show you some of these here. So David Hawkins goes through in a fairly academic way. He is just methodically going through each emotion and telling you what they are and how they interact. And he also made a chart of all the emotions in order, this is important to understand when you start learning about emotions, is that emotions can actually be measured and they each have their own kilohertz frequency, and the lower frequency emotions are the ones that most of us don't desire to have, and they have less movement in them. This is roughly the order of which they go. I might skip a couple, but it's apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, pride, courage, acceptance, peace. So, and you want to be in courage. Courage is the first one of those that is a good, positive, productive emotion where you will produce things and be a real force for good in the world and for yourself. So courage, and then acceptance is even more of that, and peace is even a higher level of that. Apathy is the lowest. At apathy, nothing's moving. You don't care. Severe depression, not where you want to be. So even fear, even someone who struggles with anxiety, it's still not great, but it's better than apathy and grief, which are even lower. So at least in fear, people in fear can actually do things. Like you can run away. People run away from a lion or whatever. Fear could save your life, right? So fear can be useful in times. So it's still, whereas apathy, grief is something you need to process. Really, all of them, even the higher ones, you need to process all of them. They need to move through you. By process, here's the thing with emotions, is they're like the weather, and they move through you, and they're just there for a short period of time, and then they're gone. The problem is that we will step in and stop them. Humans have this mechanism to be able to bury their emotions, to be able to stop them, which is a great evolutionary thing. If we're in a severe emergency situation, we want to not be super afraid so that we can act, right? We want to be able to shut it down. But outside an emergency situation, this tool really affects us negatively throughout our life because it stops us from processing emotions if we don't like the feeling of it at that moment. So then the emotion doesn't move through you, and then the energy is stuck in you, and then it causes all kinds of problems for the rest of your life. So every time you bury or stop emotions, not healthy for you. So it's even physically. So when the emotion comes through, when someone says process emotions, it just means let it do its thing. Now we have to develop tools and things to kind of get around our ability to bury it. So, but really what we're doing is just allowing it to do its natural thing, to travel on its natural course. And that's true of apathy, grief, fear, uh, anger, pride, whatever it is, to let it move through us, which usually isn't happening. So that's what being able to process your emotions is. Hawkins really goes into all the details, and you can see a chart of exactly what they are. It's good to have the visual. I did a whole podcast on this actually at one point, so you might want to check that out. Something, letting go of emotions, something like that. I remember holding up the Hawkins book during it. So that one's really great. There's Don Miguel Ruiz has The Four Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom, which I find great. And that's a smaller book, fairly short, easy to read. That's something that, you can just jump into and, oh, okay. He'll give you some wisdom on how to deal with life. It's a real simple, but really good way to start the initiation process. He gives you, they have certain particular rules. A lot of it comes from Mayan wisdom, I believe. Then there's, I really love this book too, A Branch from the Lightning Tree, Ecstatic Myth and the Grace of Wilderness from Martin Shaw. That's a fantastic book. This is about the initiation process. So there's a lot of details about what I'm talking about here in that book. Absolutely great book if you want to just know about the initiation process itself. Then there's Secrets of the Talking Jaguar by Martine Prachtel. I'm going to put all these in the description so you can see them. And all this is, was a Mayan shaman who, when the culture was destroyed, came back to America. He really gives you an inside view to a shaman in an indigenous culture. I think it was the last major indigenous culture on Earth. I believe it was a civilization of 300,000 people when it was finally overrun world, and that was in the late 80s. That's really gives you some inside information on the initiation process of that culture. Making the Gods Work for You, The Astrological Language of the Psyche, Caroline Casey, who has the show on KPFA. If you've heard of her, she's been on the air for many years, at least 30 years, I think now. Hers goes into astrology. It's a good tool for being able to learn about yourself and who you are and be able to see the different parts of yourself, because we're all very complex, and this really can help you learn who you are. And then there's Iron John, A Book for Men by Robert Bly, which you may have heard of. A lot of people have read this book. If you're male, or even if you're not, if you want to know about men, really dives into deeper stuff that I can talk about here, but really, really fantastic. And also there's The Once and Future King by T.H. White, which goes into the development of jurisprudence and society and laws and a lot of different things, getting to know yourself and being a leader and guiding people. Pretty powerful. And also for guys, there's No More Mr. Nice Guy. Also not bad for women to read either, by Robert Glover. And that goes into the nice guy syndrome and how, which most guys now are. The nice guy syndrome is it's the second stage male, and the second stage male as compared to the first stage male. The first stage male is more the classic guy, tough, not really connected with his emotions, a good leader, treats women as property, and but is very strong and confident and can be successful, like leaders and generals of the past. There aren't that many people like that left. There are, I mean, number wise there are, but percentage wise, that's a small percentage of men. Most men now are the nice guys. The nice guys are more subtle, more aware of their emotions, really tend to struggle with fear a lot, uh, and really unsure of themselves and lack confidence, but they're developing into it. The original first stage men have confidence, but it's a confidence out of ignorance. So it's kind of a false front, a fake confidence. They're overcompensating for emotions. Then there are third stage men, and that's when you develop true confidence. It's a spectrum. So these categories are somewhat arbitrary, but they do help you to just look at it. It's a model. It's not the actual reality, but the model helps you be able to look at how men are and the growth process they're going through. And it's a real good complement with Iron John if you read both of them. So also a really good book. So all of these books can really help you begin to be able to look at the world, look at leadership, look at men's roles, look at women's roles, look at how emotions work and then how relationships work. This is just a small number of books, but I think it'd be a good place to start. So as far as the tools for changing yourself. So I've given you a few so far. One is identifying your negative self-talk so that you can move into being more confident. And that's I will reiterate, that is just paying attention every day to what's going on in your head. Get a little notebook, something that's bound or connected that has pages. Small things are good, something you can carry around with yourself, and you can just make check marks in there every time you say something negative about yourself, and just keep track of that. And just the awareness of it, just being aware of this will help you. And I found that this happens with a lot of things. You go to do the thing and you think you're going to like get in there with the nuts and bolts and fix it, but really the fixing is the being aware. The being aware is the fixing. So mostly that's what you need to do, is be aware. So being aware of your emotions throughout the day, right there, it's an amazing thing to start with. Another great tool to start with is doing mirror work. So looking in the mirror every day for maybe 5 minutes each morning and say just positive things about yourself while you're looking in your own eyes. If you can do that for 30 days, you've got my respect, because 30 days straight. So if you skip a day, you got to start back day one again. Try that. Try that one. Another thing that you can start with is to do some emotional release work. So learning about emotional releasing, there's Sedona method. Hale Dowskin has good videos up. I have a few on my YouTube channel. Also, so, doing emotional release of whatever kind, or emotional allowing, that can be really powerful, really powerful. And then, of course, all of these things are not for everyone. Try them, see if that's the thing for you. If it's not, do something else. So another good thing to start with, especially if you're going to start to work on emotions, didn't mention this before, is do a grounding technique. That's really important. Before you do emotional work, really before you do any work, really of any kind, it's always better to ground first. But when you're shifting emotions, you really want to ground first. It's going to be way more effective. Way more effective. If you just do the emotional release without grounding, I'm not saying it won't work, but boy, you'll get a lot more bang for your buck if you do grounding first. And grounding is, it's just a quick meditation type thing where you send some roots down and ground yourself. And you might want to try that out. See how that works for you. I have a couple of those on my YouTube channel. I'm sure there's lots of other YouTube things out there if you look specifically for grounding. I don't think everything on there is going to be useful, but I don't think I've seen any grounding ones that were bad. I don't know. But if you want to be careful, then just go to my YouTube channel and look those up. There's a couple of grounding ones in there. So you've got emotional release, you've got grounding, you've got mirror work, you've got paying attention to negative self-talk. Those are all great places to start from. Can read Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, or any of these books, and that will really launch you into something else as well. So even one of these things, just the mirror work will affect your life. If it works for you, just the mirror work can do that. Just the emotional release. All of these things work for me, and just the grounding and just the negative self-talk. I've had a couple people I've seen. I had like one person who had trouble with grounding, and this is over the last 10, 15 years, and one person who had trouble with the negative self-talk. But that's out of a lot of people, so it's pretty rare, at least in my experience. Who knows? So no guarantees, but one of these things is bound to work. You've never seen anyone who none of them worked for. So, and the grounding and the release are both on my YouTube channel. The negative self-talk is pretty simple. Yeah, so I would start with one of those and then get into these books. And then you can also just watch my other podcasts. There'll be other things in there that will be able to help you with all different aspects of initiation process, because the initiation is kind of the overarching thing, and a lot of the work I do with people is some part of that, because there's a lot in there, whether it's relationship work or dating work or getting to know yourself or emotional release work or masculine development or, almost you name it, it's part of the initiation process, right? So it's all in there somewhere, all in that initiation process that we didn't get. Most of us didn't get most of anyway. So thanks for spending time with me today and listening to talk about the initiation process. And I hope it was helpful for you. If you found this helpful, please subscribe and follow, and that way you won't miss future episodes. For updates, there's a Substack email list you can sign up with. And you can also feel free to reach out to me for coaching if you are interested in that. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode. If today's conversation resonated with you and you'd like to explore working together, I've included a link below where you can learn more about coaching and schedule a complimentary discovery session. Hi, guys. If you could like, subscribe, follow, share, that way I can help bring you more information and better podcasts in the future. Thanks.